of the Science Cafe third anniversary. So my name is Yusuf Utman Sharif. So just like yesterday, the rules remain the same. We expect every participant to mute your mic, and if you have any question, that you type it in the chat box, and also you can raise your hands after Professor finish her presentation. So today, our speaker today is Professor Catriona Waitt from the University of Liverpool. She'll be taking us to mentorship and networking. So Professor Catriona Waitt is a professor of clinical pharmacology and global health at the University of Liverpool, United Kingdom, undertaking her welcome clinical research career and development fellow at the Infectious Disease Institute, Makerere University College of Health and Sciences, Kampala, Uganda. Her major interest is drug dosing and safety in populations that are complex and often neglected from clinical trials, particularly pregnant and breastfeeding mothers and their infants. Her fellowship, MILK, with the acronym MILK, means maternal and infant lactating pharmacokinetics, explores the transfer of a range of anti-ineffective drugs from mother to breastfed infants, combining clinical studies and pharmacometric approaches. Alongside her research, she is a member of the Scientific Advisory Board for Pharmacometric Africa. So, Professor Catriona Waitt, you're welcome. So you have the floor. You can start the presentation. Thank you.
Wonderful. Well, thank you very much for the warm welcome and the introduction. Let me just get this up, and Shakir, you'll just have to advise me when I start whether you're seeing it in presenter view or I'm not so familiar with. Can you see it in my speaker view or in the proper presenter view?
Your speaker view.
Yeah, right. So let me just try again. I'm not used to using two screens. So maybe if I do it this way, are you seeing the same?
It's still your speaker view, not the...
I wonder. Just let me just see if there's something I can do to switch the two. Display, here we go. Display, right. So that should be correct now.
Yes. No, it hasn't.
No, you're still seeing.
Yeah, we can still see the next slides.
That's weird. Okay, maybe if I just do like so and just duplicate so that,
It's
the
done.
shared window is gone. Okay, one more attempt at this. What I was doing there is I'm going to just duplicate both screens so that what you see is exactly the same as what I'm seeing. So hopefully,
yes, this
now.
looks, yes, it's perfect now.
Wonderful. So thank you very much for the introduction to speak, and thank you for introducing me. I'm calling this evening from Kampala in Uganda, and I've lived here for about 9 years. So sometimes I don't even know where I'm from anymore, and I don't always feel fully British, although I am yet to visit Nigeria. I'm excited to talk on this topic because it's something that I wish I'd heard more on when I was at a more junior stage. And so my contact details are on the screen, and I'm very happy for anybody to reach out. There'll be a time for questions. And you can also share anything on social media if you find that a helpful way to communicate. So what I do is I lead a research program where I study drug dosing and safety in complex and understudied populations, particularly pregnant and breastfeeding mothers and their children. And so that work has quite a lot of clinical trials, mathematical modeling, bioanalytical techniques, quite a lot of very pure science. But at the same time, over the past few years, it's taken on an increasing equity and public engagement, community engagement side, because really it's about finding ways to reach the populations who need to know. Because I could have the best drug in the world, but if nobody's going to take it, if they don't know about it or they have concerns about it, then what can we do? So in terms of what I'm going to cover in today's talk, I'm going to touch on what is mentorship, and then maybe think about some of the misconceptions. I will share one or two of my own experiences. It's interesting to present to an unknown audience to know how much depth to go into, but maybe some things that I wish I had known. And then at the end, you can literally ask me anything. So the word mentorship, I found, is often a little bit misunderstood. The original name comes from Greek mythology. So in the story of Homer's Odyssey, a friend of Odysseus, he left his son Telemachus in the charge of an elderly man called Mentor when he went off to fight in the Trojan War. And under Mentor's guidance, Telemachus became skilled in all the things he needed, so hunting and wrestling and other things like that. But actually, Mentor was the goddess Athena in disguise, so there was more to the story than met the eye at the time. But that from this time on, the word mentor has been taken to mean somebody who imparts wisdom to and shares knowledge with a less experienced colleague. Now, one point I'd like to make about that is that somebody may be less experienced in many respects, but they may have one particular area where they're much more experienced than yourself. So later we'll get onto this concept of peer mentorship. And I can tell you that I've actually learned every bit as much from many of my junior colleagues as they might have learned from me. But there are some sort of misconceptions. And so if mentorship is the act or process of helping and guiding another person to support their professional development, to help somebody become the best version of themselves that they can be, there are some related areas that can cause confusion. And what I've drawn around them is a kind of semi-permeable membrane, because we often find ourselves moving from between one and the other. Sometimes we function more in one box than the other, so it's not right to put a solid line around them. But there's sponsorship, which sponsorship is more externally facing. So that might be advocacy, visibility, promotions, and connections. So that might be, for example, I could be sitting in a committee meeting and somebody says, oh, who should we invite to be the young researcher representative for this? And I might say, oh, you should ask Shakir because he's amazing, or something like that. That kind of role is more sponsorship, and also perhaps me being able to bring some knowledge from what I know is taking place behind closed doors to help give guidance. And it can be a little bit transactional. And I think it's really sometimes important to lay that on the table. There's nothing wrong with that, but there can be a bit of, we do something for you, and in return, perhaps you do something that helps me. There's also supervision, which is direct involvement in the specific work. Oftentimes supervisors do become mentors, but not always. And sometimes your mentors actually have nothing to do with your direct work. There's coaching. Sometimes as a mentor, we do act as a coach. Coaching is meant to be quite non-directive. It's meant to be about finding somebody, find their own best solutions. So it's difficult to be both a coach and a supervisor, because it's hard for a supervisor to step right back and not actually say what they think. There's training, there's specific skills that you might need. Sometimes that comes through the mentors, but sometimes it's actually going out and getting those skills somewhere else, but the mentor might guide you on that. There are occasionally times when somebody does need some professional help. Sometimes things happen in your life. Hopefully, things that require professional help don't happen in the workplace, but occasionally they do. Sometimes somebody does need some counseling or more additional support. And sometimes it can be hard as a mentor actually to know when you might have actually slipped into that box. You know, there's one thing helping somebody through a crisis, but if you really feel you're outside of your own skill set. And there is quite a lot of overlap between these domains. But I think what it helps to keep in mind is what is the primary objective of this relationship. So what am I trying to achieve and for who? And in some situations, people recommend drawing up a mentorship plan where they lay some of it out in more detail. That is not something I've ever really done, but I can see why it might have been helpful at certain points in the past. I found this graphic on social media shared quite unashamedly with acknowledgement, but you can see the different roles. So perhaps the manager tells you what their expectations are. The mentor talks with you. The coach talks to you, and the sponsor talks about you. So you can see that all of these are kind of related, but mentorship is standing alone in some respects. So there obviously are quite a number of misconceptions, and certainly asking around my networks, some of the ones that came up included some of these. So some people think that only juniors need to have a mentor and that a mentor must be senior to you. And that isn't really the case, because actually, as you get more senior, you might feel that you really do need that person that you can sit and talk things over with and that can guide you. I certainly feel I make better use of my mentors as I get more senior than I did when I was more junior. But there are many times when a junior colleague has got a specific skill or a specific area that they're really strong in, and they can mentor me in that respect. So it is a bit two-way. Sometimes you think, well, you need to know what you're approaching somebody for. I know when I was more junior, I might be put off approaching people for mentorship because I might think I don't even know what my question is. But again, that is partly the point. Your mentor can help you find the question. You might think, oh, you can only have one mentor at a time. But I think it's actually more about networks. It's more about mentorship networks where different people relate to you in different ways at different times. Mentorship must be formalized? Not really. And in fact, sometimes these schemes where you get paired with a mentor, they do have a place, definitely. My own experience of them has been a bit challenging, but actually some of the best mentors are those people that you just know you can go to with certain things. Mentorship only focuses on career development. Well, I think sometimes, yes, some of my mentors I would only talk to about my career, but some actually see the whole of you. Each one of us is a rounded human being with all kinds of aspects to our life, and that's important. To be a mentor requires time and effort with little return. That is actually something that puts some people off volunteering to mentor junior team members, and I find that a great shame because it does require time and effort, but I think the return is absolutely rich. The return, what I learn from people that I spend time mentoring greatly exceeds anything they could learn from me, and it also helps me understand the challenges that the rising generation face. It helps me to reflect, it holds me accountable, and I would very much want somebody who is thinking of becoming a mentor to understand that they're going to gain a lot through that process too. And another misconception is that the mentors have to be quite similar to yourself so that you can relate to one another. So there does have to be some kind of chemistry. You do have to be able to actually get on at some level and understand each other. But often it's when you get different people approaching problems from different directions, different angles. Sometimes they see things so differently, and that can also be very rich. So those are some of the myths and misconceptions that have come up. But in terms of my own experiences, it is interesting to know how much to share to an unknown group of people that I can't see. So I will just touch on a few things, some of which is shown on the slide. So some of the biggest challenges I have had have not been so much to do with my work. During my PhD, I actually had my first 3 children, and my first daughter died quite, well, death of a baby is always unexpected, isn't it? But she had a cardiac arrest when she was 9 weeks old and we were living in Malawi. And that really made me reflect on everything. It's probably a point that I will come back to several times during this presentation, but you really have to ask yourself, in the whole of your life, what matters most? It's also interesting because at that time, my PhD was on basically TB immunology. And if you wanted to know the whole story of how I got into drugs in pregnancy and breastfeeding, my own experiences of motherhood and parenthood have been very much a driving factor in that. But God blessed me with another 4 children after that. And so then I had the sort of challenges of raising a young family, juggling life and work and other complexities. And the final slide really was one a picture I took as a bit of a joke, that some of my friends think that my life is incredibly glamorous because I fly around the world and I go to cities like Rome and Paris and give talks. And there I was on a plane somewhere, finalizing a talk and taking quite a large handful of painkillers to deal with a chronic health condition that I have. And it felt anything but glamorous. But I know that some people on this call will be facing some of these limitations, that you might have something about you that can feel like a bit of a thorn in the flesh. And you think, how can somebody like me flourish in the academic workplace? But what I have come to learn over the years is that sometimes those things that make you a bit different to other people and have maybe been really quite painful, if they're harnessed correctly, they might turn out to be your superpower. So, I mean, really, the darkest challenges, the light often shines brightest. And just to illustrate that with the example of my son, with his permission, whilst I was doing my PhD on TB, he got TB. And whether doctors didn't really believe me when I said I thought he had TB, because I think they thought I was just too close to the area. But here's a baby, and I think you've all seen babies like this. But here he is, 6 months later. You can see he's just had his final dose of rifampicin, and he's swallowed some of it, and some of the rest of it's all over the floor and all over him. But look at him. And here he was about a week ago helping me prepare for a talk, reminding us all that TB treatment saves lives just like his. And that actually, sometimes when you've actually walked through a dark trial, which I know some of you will, you can draw from that and think, how can I use my skills to make a real, tangible difference in people's lives? Because often, working in African healthcare settings, we can get so swamped by the sheer statistics, the number of deaths, the amount of poverty, the amount of hardship. But remember, each life you can impact makes a massive difference. And that I often find is a great motivation when things feel overwhelming. But anyway, here I was back in 2010. And this photo was actually at the World Conference on TB and Lung Health in Berlin. And it was an interesting time. I was midway through my PhD, and as I say, here in my second and third child with me. And at that time, I thought I didn't really see people who looked like me in academia. I didn't see those role models, and I wondered, would I ever belong? I also can't quite see what that one says because of how I've got my screen set up. But I think I lacked the confidence that I felt many of my colleagues had. Sometimes I would go into certain rooms and certain forums, and there would be colleagues. You can probably tell from my accent that I'm not English, but I was studying and working a lot in England, and there's a specific type of confident English person, and I just don't fit that. Actually, I get quite excitable. I get passionately excited, but also sometimes emotional. And I did worry that I actually had the wrong personality to stay in academia. I think those things were seen as a bit of a liability. I didn't feel that I was a natural leader, and I wondered whether it was possible to learn such things. I wondered where I could learn the soft skills, networking, presenting, carving out a niche, leadership. Where could I learn that? Could I possibly have a truly healthy life-work balance? And how on earth will my husband, who's also a clinical academic, how are we going to juggle all these different roles? And was it going to be possible? Some days I just felt I needed some encouragement, and I felt maybe that made me weak. And at that time, I did have some mentors who I felt never had time for me, and I did wonder if I was actually, in fact, an inconvenience. And it's interesting to reflect back 13 years ago, how many of those questions I've answered and some of the lessons I've learned. And I don't want anybody else to actually feel that way. So I hope that through tonight's talk, maybe I'll be able to help some of you overcome some of these things. I think one of the most important lessons is that we are more than our jobs, we are more than our studies, and we are more than our careers. And I'd like you to actually just stop for a moment and ask yourself, what is the ultimate end of man? I think some of you will recognize that question, but what really matters? What are the most important things of all? And at the end of time, if your life were to end tonight, how would you want to be remembered? And I find that it sounds morbid, but I think it's a really important question to come back to periodically, because it helps you realize what your priorities and perspectives are. So what do I wish I'd known? Well, here are some kind of quick lessons in no particular order. And this first one is actually probably my biggest secret. And I don't know if I should share my secrets, but this is something it took me way too long to realize. So often as we get more senior, or even when we're quite junior, we can feel there's so much to do. So you might have emails, clinic, grants, reports, you need to prepare a talk, you've got some meetings, you've got mentors, you keep getting emails from journals, you've got paperwork, and you think, how on earth do I do that? So imagine this is your working day, and I want to make it clear that I do not work from 4 a.m. till midnight every single day. But I certainly never worked between midnight and 4 a.m. But this is just sort of illustrative. Each of us have times of day when we have more energy than others. And the key thing is trying to match the tasks to the amount of energy and creativity required. So for me, I'm extremely good between kind of about 4 and 8 in the morning. That's when I do my best writing, I have the most creative ideas. If I want to write a grant or do something really powerful, I'll do it then. As the morning goes, I'm okay, but then I start to fade out. And to be honest, by kind of early afternoon, I'm fairly hopeless. And then sometimes I might as well just give up. I might as well just stop even trying to work, spend some time with my family. And then later on, when the children go to bed, I've got a bit of energy and I can maybe do some tasks. So the key thing is to take the tasks on your list and do not waste your best time on the things that don't need your best time. So for me, things like writing grants or things that I find difficult. I mean, obviously I'm not having a meeting at that time, but things that I know need my full focus and attention, I'll give them my best time. Things like clinic, I might not really have a choice about because I have to do it then. But you could then think, okay, things that require medium amounts of energy, your emails, don't let your emails take your best strength. Things that you enjoy, you can probably do that when you're getting a little bit tireder. I often tell my team, and I do actually give my team members a 1-page SOP to tell them how to manage me, but that time of afternoon, I'm not at my best. But I can do a face-to-face meeting because that's often very energizing. So I don't know if it's a good thing or not if I give you that time. And then there's other tasks that you can do in the evening. So I think you start to see that we all have these different areas of strength, and I'd like you to perhaps reflect on where you work best. Another lesson is trying to understand your personality. So again, I used to think that this was a bit of psychological almost nonsense. I didn't really buy into it. But in about 2018, I got quite tired, and somebody suggested that I did some personality testing to try and understand myself. And there was this very simple website, 16personalities.com, and it was incredible. It produced a summary of your personality, and it was like somebody had peered into my soul. And I just was quite stunned at how accurate it was, but how helpful. Because one thing I realized is that although I am energetic and colourful and give lots of talks and things, actually my personality is quite deeply introverted, and I just need to get away from it all sometimes. And it's helpful to understand that, because each of us has unique strengths. We can change our job to suit our personality, but it's really hard if you try to change your personality to suit your job. So you need to work out what energizes you and recharge. For me, I always love being in the mountains, and on the far right, you can see me with one of my pharmacokinetic modeling colleagues in Cape Town. Absolutely wonderful to be walking somewhere beautiful, discussing complex maths, but actually getting the fresh air and refreshment that we both need. Which probably leads me on to lesson 4, that I had those doubts earlier on that I just somehow didn't fit. But when you actually find your fit and you find almost like your tribe, academic work can become a massive adventure. And the bonus is that you'll make lifelong friends. So in the top right, that's myself with one of my PhD supervisors. Again, all these years later, we're still in regular contact. Top left, you might recognize one of the faces there in particular. A bunch of colleagues who are mad enough to go walking in the rain in their evening wear. And bottom right, another colleague in Cape Town who enjoys mountain climbing. But for you, it might be something different, but finding that way of connecting. So lesson number 5, and I'm starting to pivot here slightly into networking. That networking and mentorship are very closely related, because as we network with each other, you get into this concept of peer mentorship, where each person is somehow challenging and encouraging one another in different ways, bringing diverse perspectives, collaborations, hearing the voices of the next generation, learning from the older generation, new ideas, and also visibility. So perhaps the next lesson about networking would be that you can prepare. So I mentioned at the start that I never felt very confident in certain situations, and honestly, I still don't. But I've learned a few little tricks that help. So one is preparing. I don't know if you've heard of this concept of an elevator pitch, but the idea is that if you're at a meeting, a conference, and you sit down next to somebody and the meeting hasn't quite started, and they lean over to you and they say, "So, what do you do?" Or you might be queuing for lunch or something like that. You know, it's a sort of 30 to 60-second pitch where you basically just, in a nutshell, say what you do, what you stand for, what you're interested in. And it's worth writing these out and practicing and having a couple of versions such that it almost becomes automatic. So for me, mine would be something like, I'm a clinical pharmacologist with a particular interest in dosing and safety in complex and understudied populations, such as pregnant and breastfeeding women. Pretty much the way I introduced this talk. But have a go and you might be surprised. The other thing about going to conferences is that actually do read up on the speakers and the delegates and think of questions you might want to ask. It might sound artificial, but do your homework. It really, really helps. And another thing that can really help is social media if it's used effectively. Again, this is an area where some people are quite cautious. And I was a very, very late adopter. I didn't even have a smartphone until about 2019. But I've really become persuaded that it's powerful. It's good to actually step back and have a strategy and think about what you actually want to achieve by using social media professionally. So what do you want to achieve? What is your purpose? What do you represent? And then which platforms achieve your purposes? So for me, what I found is that a combination of LinkedIn and Twitter, or X as they now call it, a combination of those two seem to work quite well, because Twitter is very, very fast and quite informal. LinkedIn is a little bit more corporate. There's quite different audiences in both. But I think with social media, you do have to be aware of the pitfalls and remember that you are very visible. So I often say to people, don't use it if you're angry or tired, or if you've taken alcohol. don't say anything that you wouldn't say to your boss, to your parents, to your faith leader. You know, it's very visible. And I wouldn't get drawn into meaningless debates and arguments. But one thing that is very useful is you can tag funders and stakeholders and attract collaboration. It does establish your presence. I've been at conferences where completely unknown people have walked up to me and said how much they've been following my social media and how interesting and inspiring they think it is. And that's somebody that I've never known. So it can be used powerfully if you can have that real sort of vision and carve out what you want to do with it. Perhaps lesson 8, and I'm getting towards the end, is just the need to always just review, reflect, and reassess. Many of you will have seen this diagram of the iceberg illusion of success. And there can be times when academic life is simply tough. And it can seem like everybody else is getting papers, grants, all sorts of things, but you don't see what goes on behind. But I would remind you that it is a marathon and not a sprint. Nobody can have it all at once. I do not believe that. I think it's a lie that we're told in the modern world, women more than men, but you can't, something has to give. And there may be seasons of your life where you do need to just step back a bit. But I can promise you that whatever you face, you're probably not the first to have been in that situation. So there will be people you can reach out to. Sometimes you do need to change direction, and that is not a failure. That is a choice. And this is where we can use our mentors and networks to help you. So I've got like quite a list of people that, depending on what the situation is, I would just either WhatsApp them or ask them for a coffee or send an email. Different people I will take different things to try and build that supportive network around yourself. So really, that's pretty much all I wanted to say. And I know that I've touched on many themes quite quickly, but what I was hoping was that for me, not knowing your backgrounds, that there would be something for everybody and that each of you will go away with something to think about. But now I believe there's a time of Q&A and you can ask me anything at all. So back to the chairs.
Thank you so much, Professor Catriona. I mean, that was a well presentation. I hope we all have learned, have understood what Professor have presented. So if you have any question, you may now ask a question or you type it in the chat box.
So always asking the first question is always a bit scary, isn't it?
Yeah.
Any suggested icebreakers? What I would say is, just in case it didn't come across, I believe every single person has got something very unique that means that they are the only person that can do certain things. And actually, diversity is something incredibly beautiful and to be celebrated. And it took me a long time to realize that. And there were certain things that I did think of as being meant that I didn't fit in or that I was a liability. And yet, actually, as time goes by, instead of trying to hide who you are, actually building on those things and being confident in who you are, because you will have very important gifts. As I say, I don't know you as individuals, but I do know about human beings. And so if anybody is, oh, I don't know if I belong.
So maybe I'll ask a question. I have a question, Prof. Let me start.
Yes.
So my question is, what strategies will you employ to maintain a meaningful and productive connection with your mentor?
Interesting. I think that's one area that I often feel there's never is often better than no time. I think it's a two-way process. So if you've got a mentor that's quite busy, sometimes they might not realize how quickly time is passing. And they might also presume that because they haven't heard from you that everything is okay. So what is a better approach, if you can, is to try and schedule some regular time, even if it be like half an hour every few months, just to almost reflect on your goals and your progress, or even just catch up, rather than waiting until you're in a particular crisis. So certainly for me, I love it when my students and mentees actually reach out to me. I know that sometimes I'm a bit deficient in reaching back to them. And then other things that I've tried to do is I've got a couple of WhatsApp groups where I have different groups of people. So one of them is a sort of peer mentoring group where we sometimes just ask each other questions, and sometimes we can sort of share things that we've come across that we've found helpful. But I don't know, I wonder if someone else has found strategies helpful in connecting between mentors and mentees.
Thank you for that answer. So guys, if you have a question, you can ask a question or you type it in the chat box.
But in terms of connection, sometimes you have to recognize when something's not working out. So I think I mentioned previously, I felt that I had certain mentors that were never available, and actually made me feel like I was a nuisance. And because I wasn't very confident, it was quite crushing. And I made a decision probably about 7 years ago that going forward, I would just actually work with people that I could work well with. It wasn't that there was anything wrong with some of the previous ones, they were just not available. And I realized that my style of collaboration and things, I actually need people that can respond quickly to things and sometimes give a bit of reassurance. So I deliberately started working with different people. So sometimes you actually need to make positive choices. And it's okay if perhaps a previous mentorship relationship comes to an end, not because of anybody's fault. Some people describe it as almost being like a no-fault divorce. It's just that for one reason or another, it hasn't worked out, and that's okay. I can see another question in the chat from Emmanuel.
Yes.
What are the criteria to select a mentor, and how can a mentee be proactive to make the relationship productive? Gosh, so criteria, I suppose sometimes you see someone doing something or working in a space and you think, I want to be able to do that. So maybe there's a gap in something that you're doing. You might see somebody, say, giving a really good presentation and you think, wow, I wish I could learn to present like that. Or you might see somebody doing a particularly unusual career and you think, wow, I'd like to get into that. So sometimes you can just start off by almost reaching out to them. And it almost can blossom into a mentorship relationship. Whereas if I was selecting a mentor in my university that was closer to home that I could actually meet regularly, I would think getting on with them and them being available would probably be more important than them being the most brilliant in their field. That actually they have to have time and availability. And how can the mentee be proactive? I think just keep the conversation going. Reach out to them, but remember that they're human too. And sometimes that's a bit of a difficult one to know how far to go in a hierarchical system and how far to be professional. But ask them how they're doing. If they've got a big deadline or something, just just show that you're aware of the pressures on them. I can see another question that relates that in academia, must your mentor be from the field of interest, or you pick because of their, or you pick a mentor because of a possible attraction like their professionalism? Well, actually, I think both. And this is why I think as time goes by, you often end up with sort of a range of mentors, because sometimes you need somebody that actually understands the discipline enough that, you know, for example, I might say, oh, I think pharmacokinetic modeling, I think the future is moving more into physiologically based PK with perhaps some artificial intelligence coming through, and that's the way things are moving. If I was wanting to sort of discuss that with someone, they'd actually have to understand the concepts and ideally be in the same field. But then sometimes it's their professionalism or their leadership. So again, as I've got more senior, I think my range of mentors has actually got quite a lot broader, because as well as the science, I'm being mentored in things like leadership and public engagement and policy and things like that. So I know I haven't quite answered the question, but I think it's, if you almost draw a map and put yourself at the center and draw sort of spokes going out, you might actually find that there are different people in different domains. I can see another question from Abdullah Faiz. What has been the most rewarding thing along your career? Wow. Interesting question. I think when you sit on the floor in some community site with a bunch of breastfeeding women who are so different from you in many ways, culturally, socioeconomically, linguistically, and yet actually for every mother, there's that common bond that all of us worry about any treatment that we take affecting our baby. I had quite a lot of those concerns myself through pregnancies and breastfeeding, and I sit with women and I hear their concerns. And being able to engage with them, answer some of their questions, but actually take those questions back to the office, write grants, get funding, do the work, and then be able to go back a couple of years later to the same women and give them some of the answers and feel that actually this matters, because worldwide, more than half of all women require some kind of drug during breastfeeding, and there's not actually up until recently been very many people that have cared enough to find out. So for me, it's the sort of the connection between my science and my sort of humanity. It all comes together in one spot. And I think it took me a while to find that sweet spot. And that's maybe another whole topic, that sometimes you can be working on something that's interesting, but it's not what really makes you tick. And you might want to change into a different field. I did my PhD in TB immunology, which was fine. It was interesting. But this sort of breastfeeding pharmacology, it's where my heart is, really, I think.
Yes, so thank you, Professor. There is a question from Arun. He asks that what strategies you suggest convey mental health and career options to mentor, as often academic life is very stressful. That's the question from Arun.
Great. No, that's an excellent question. I didn't see that one, but yeah. So I think for me, I mentioned I started doing that personality testing thing back in about 2018, when I was under quite a lot of stress, and I mean, to be honest, I wasn't really myself, and didn't know what was wrong. I suppose technically it comes under the category of sort of burnout, but whether I couldn't work out if I was depressed. And then I sort of realized that I wasn't doing the things that I needed to recharge. So for me, fresh air and exercise it's not an optional extra. If I don't get outside and walk or run every day, I go a little crazy. That's what makes me tick. I've got another colleague who travels everywhere with a French horn, because if she doesn't play her musical instrument every day, she also, things tend to build up. For some of you, it's going to be working, through your through the mosque or through the church, through activities, through community service. For some of you, it will just be turning everything off and being with your family. So I think it's finding those things that really, really recharge us. And I think being willing to talk about mental health. One of the reasons I felt I didn't fit at the start was because I do sometimes get a bit emotional, and I don't think I'd ever seen a senior colleague show any emotion. And whilst I think there's a boundary, the fact that I can admit to my juniors, yeah, I'm human. I've got, all these deadlines. Actually, it does get a bit crushing at times. I think trying to create an environment where it's not weak to talk about mental health. So for me as a mentor, I want to open that door so people can be honest and know that I won't judge them and I won't see them as not fitting academia. And for yourselves, if you're more junior, try and find out what helps you and what makes you tick.
Thank you, Prof. Thank you, Professor. Maybe I would just like to add as a question that was earlier asked by a guest. Sorry, the name is not there. In academia, your mentor necessarily be from a field of interest, or you pick a mentor because of possible attraction like their professionalism. I would like to share a story with the from Council of State and Territorial Epidemiologists. It's an organization based in the US. So there was a pool of application. Everybody applied. You can apply as a mentor. You can also apply as a mentee. So I applied as a mentee. With my background, they were able to assign a mentor to me who also has a public health and laboratory background. So the mentorship program is for like a 10-month mentorship program. This is the 3rd month. So every month we meet once in a month. So for every meeting, we have like an agenda, what I should achieve before we meet. So these are some of, I think, based on that, we've been like going on well, and it doesn't necessarily mean that some people, there are some organization, they will look for a mentor who has the same background as you. You get so this is how I got to get a mentor who is currently based in the US. I'm currently in the mentorship for like 10 months. We've started, this is the 3rd month. Every month we meet once in a month. So you can also have an eye on LinkedIn and other social media. Some of these mentorship organizations there, you can apply, then they can assign a mentor to you. It's possible that the other person has the same kind of background or ambition. Thank you.
That's a very good story, and I think I would encourage people to look at LinkedIn. I think I am very much a late comer to LinkedIn over the last year, and it is really useful. And I quite often do have people reaching out, and sometimes it's just a single question they ask me and I respond, and that's it. And then sometimes it becomes more of a relationship over time. So I think it's like those semi-permeable membranes in a way, that it's not always quite clear cut at what point someone becomes a mentor or at what point they're just a colleague. You're asking things, but there are mentorship programs online and stuff as well. So do keep your eyes open.
Thank you, Professor. Thank you for your presentation. I hope all your questions has been answered and we'll be able to learn from Professor Catriona's presentation. So, but feel free, Professor is on LinkedIn. If you like, you can chat from LinkedIn, that you can send a connection request. Well, I'm also a connection with her. I sent that like 2 days ago when I learned that she will be one of the presenters to this session. So thank you to come to the end of this first session. There, I'm going to hand you over to Esther. She will take you to the next presenter. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Yusuf. That was beautiful. Thank you, Prof. That was amazing and in-depth. Thank you very much. My name is Esther, and I'll be moderating for this session. So the basic rule still remains, and I would like that we abide with the basic rules. So our next presenter is Dr. Menon, who will be taking us on multidisciplinary approach and building mental resilience in biosciences research. Dr. earned a PhD in pharmaceutical science from Mercer University in Atlanta in 2022. She currently works as an R&D formulation scientist at Millipore Sigma with a specialization in the development of lipid and polymer-based nanodrug delivery system. She's passionate about exploring innovative formulation methods such as microneedles to administer pharmaceutical activates through the skin as an alternative and novel route of delivery. So we're having Dr. Menon now, who will be taking us on the topic I said earlier, and I trust that you all will learn, you learn, unlearn, and relearn tonight. Thank you very much. Dr. Menon, you can have the floor. Thank you.
Thank you for your very kind introduction. Okay, let me share my screen now. Can you see my screen?
Yeah.
Yes.
No,
Thank you.
not yet.
Oh no.
It's coming up.
Can,
Yeah.
I did see it there in Uganda, so maybe it reached Uganda faster.
can you see my screen now?
It's still coming up, Doctor.
Yes, we can. It's coming up.
Yes, we can see it now.
Fine.
Okay.
Good now.
Thank you. Okay, thank you. Thank you very much for your very kind introduction. So today, and thank you, Science Cafe, for inviting me to give a talk. Today, I will be talking about building mental resilience in bioscience research and having a multidisciplinary approach to research. So before I dive into the topic, today I would like to give a disclaimer that I'm using my uh, presentation slides with my company template, but all of these views and opinions are mine and do not represent anything from my company. So before I start my topic, I would like to give a brief background about myself or my journey. So far, um, I know they just gave an introduction about what I've done during my PhD, but I would like to go back and give a complete background about my education and how I've reached to where I am today. So you get a better understanding of where I come from. So I did my bachelor's in pharmacy from India, from University of Mumbai back in 2013, and then I went ahead and for a master of pharmacy again in University of Mumbai in 2016. I graduated in 2016. Then after that, I worked for 2 years as a pharmacovigilance scientist, which is essentially drug safety reporting, for 2 years in India. And during that time, I realized that that is not where my passion lies, and I really missed research, and I always wanted to pursue research more. So I decided to apply for a PhD program, and I came here to the US, and I did my PhD at Mercer University in Atlanta. And my PhD was in formulation of microparticle vaccine to deliver it to the skin for an infectious disease called RSV, or respiratory syncytial virus. And after my PhD, I am now currently working as R&D formulation scientist at Millipore Sigma, or Merck KGA, and I've been working here ever since 2022. So that is my background. So as you can understand from my accent as well, that I have an Indian accent. So I'm from India, and that also gives a different perspective of my approach, or my journey, so to say. So many of you may be able to relate to my experiences as an international student and now an international earlier career scientist in the US. So the topic at hand today is building mental resilience in bioscience research. So before we talk about building the mental resilience that is needed for research, let us look at some of the challenges that one can have in research. And these are not just, I listed a few of the challenges that I feel, but this is just not all of them. There may be several more. So one of the main research challenges is maintaining a work-life balance. Sometimes you can get so engrossed at work that you completely lose out time at home or with your family or just by yourself. So maintaining a work-life balance is one of the challenges. And sometimes when you are a researcher, spending long hours in lab, or if you are an international student, staying away from home, or not just international, even if you are a student working in a university away from home, there's a lot of loneliness and isolation and involved in research. The third, I feel personally, is imposter syndrome. uh, you may sometimes feel that people around you are very smart, or you don't deserve to be where you are. So that is one thing that I've felt time and again at different times, um, and that can really get to you. The fourth, I feel, is the pressure to publish. Everyone here is is a young scientist, so everybody, all of us know how it can be. So there can be so much pressure to publish, and you can see around you, like, it's almost like social media, like every people's lives look so beautiful and you are not right reaching the goals. So it's the same is about the pressure to publish. Your peers or your seniors, or sometimes even your juniors, are publishing and your results are not there yet, or you are having a writer's block. So pressure to publish can really get to you, and it can also sometimes come from your PIs. So all of that, you should all know that everyone's been there, done that. And one of the most important things that personally I feel is that sometimes it can so happen that there can be a lack of recognition for what you do. It can be small recognitions, or it can be lack of recognition at a larger forum. And these are all some of the challenges that I have experienced myself. And let us look at how we that you can use some of these tips or ways to overcome it. So what can we do to overcome some of these challenges? I feel that the first thing that you can do is acknowledge the challenges. Like, these are the challenges, and uh, just accept that you're going through something. Second is a mind shift change that you can have, and third is self care, and the fourth that Professor just spoke so beautifully about, that having a mentorship and a support system, which really helps in overcoming challenges. And the fifth one is celebrate achievements. Celebrating small wins is really important, and I'll talk about all of these points in the next slides. So what I was talking about, acknowledging challenges, is that challenges or failures is like the first attempt in learning. I really like this picture that I found on the internet, um, about failure and learning from failures. So you must really understand that what we plan sometimes in life is not really how it's going to be. And this picture really showcases how your plans can you can have the plans you can have and what the reality is. And I'm sure all of us have experienced this in some point or the other in their life, not in research, or maybe in their own personal lives. Or research is all I don't think anybody has had a straight path to success in research. So recognize and accept that challenges and failures are inherent in research. It is called research. So, you have to keep repeating, and then embrace them, embrace the failures as learning opportunities rather than setbacks. Because at every failed experiment is you're learning something and you're improving constantly. And understand that setbacks are normal part of scientific process and can lead to valuable insights. Like, the sometimes, I'm not sure, but there should be like a journal. We all publish our findings, we all publish our experiments that have been successful, but really if there could be a publication for failed experiments, that would be so valuable, because sometimes you need to learn what some experiments didn't work, to understand what you can avoid. So yeah, acknowledge challenges that you're going to experience a ton of failures before you're going to get some success. A mind shift change, and you can understand that a lot of the things that I'm going to say have a lot of overlap, because all of these things is, after all, a very overlapped or a concept. So when you face these challenges, you must understand, you must have a growth mindset where setbacks are viewed as opportunities for growth and improvement. And such a growth mindset fosters resilience and perseverance. And perseverance is one of the most important or quality for a researcher. You need to have the perseverance to keep repeating your experiments, but that doesn't mean that you keep, if your one of your experiment is failing multiple times, you just don't keep repeating that, and you must sometimes accept that what the hypothesis that you uh, started with, it may not work, and you need to accept that, okay, this is not going to work, and you have to adapt and change your protocols and stay flexible to sometimes accept the harsh reality that your experiment is not going to work and abandon it, because if you keep repeating something too many number of times, that's a lost opportunity to learn something new by turning the page and learning something, starting something different. So, adapting to change and staying flexible in the face of unexpected results or challenges can be very valuable. So, I just saw this picture on the internet of somebody labeling a tube. So, one of the things that very basic thing that I learned in research is one of my seniors telling me that don't label your um, tube on their cap of the tube, and you need to label it on the side of the tube. That's where you're supposed to label. And I was told that, but I labeled the cap, and then I had a bunch of tubes, and then I kept they got mixed, and then I didn't realize that what I was working with, so I had to lose some of my materials. So, and I have passed on that information to my juniors as well, that whenever you're labeling something, label your tubes. So that's where you learn that you were told something and you forgot to do that, but then you did the mistake, so you learn yourself, so then you can pass on the information. So you are always going to learn from your mistakes, so make sure that you have that growth mindset whenever you're in lab. Self-care, this is very important, because when you are working in the lab or a researcher, you can completely get zoned into the experiments and long working hours, and you can forget about yourself. But prioritizing self-care or self-care is really important to get back to your work in a healthy way. So self-care is very important, and you should, I cannot stress enough how much you need to prioritize self-care to maintain your overall well-being, because too many failed experiments can really affect your mental well-being. So taking care of yourself through all that can help you go back to lab with a fresh healthy mindset the next day. So the best way is to get involved in activities outside of research that bring joy and relaxation. So when you go for an activity, try to avoid something that is related to your work, because sometimes we can get so carried away that you want to be productive, or you want to keep working. You're so workaholic that you want to do work or something productive at even your off time. So don't do that. Take the time off to do something that you enjoy and which is not part of research or not part of your work. And what you like to do may not be something that somebody else likes to do. So if you like to go work out at the gym, go work out at the gym. But if you are not a crazy gym person, but if you feel that just painting gives you joy, do that. And if you like to go pray, if that gives you happiness or peace, do that. So whatever makes you happy, do that for self-care. And always remember that self-care and self-love is not being selfish. So if you're choosing your mental well-being over anything, it's fine, and that does not make you selfish. And these are some of the good ideas for self-care, which may or may not be in line with what you like to do, but these are some of the things that I thought was interesting. Mentorship and support system. So now this one slide, I feel like after the wonderful talk by Professor, I'm just reiterating whatever she said in a very, very short way, that mentorship and support system is very important to get you through um, research. So, and I see that all of you guys are already doing it, that you have established a mentorship program to connect with experienced researcher and young scientists. So you've already checked the first box, that you are attending such kind of making such kind of connections. And having a mentor provides guidance and support during challenging times. And I completely agree that having a mentor that you can talk to or take guidance for, who may or may not be from your direct field, is a very valuable thing that you will have in your life. So you guys are already taken the first step in the right direction. And a supportive and collaborative environment can significantly contribute to your mental well-being as well. So when you have a support system, like they say, it takes a village to raise a child. And I believe that during my PhD, my thesis or my PhD dissertation was my child. So I needed my support system, not just from my mentors, but from my peers and my friends. So having that support system really helped me during my research days, back during graduate school, and also now. So uh, having that support system is really, really important. And the most important thing is that don't be afraid to ask for help. And if somebody is your senior and you feel that they just don't think that someone's not going to help you, just ask for help. And I'm sure everybody in the field of research is always eager to help the other person, because everybody just wants you to succeed. So just don't be afraid to ask for help. And even if you're trying to ask for help over social media, over LinkedIn, that somebody that you don't know, just don't hold back. Just shoot them that message. And the worst thing that can happen is they don't have time and they may not get back to you immediately, but somebody will definitely reach back to you. So don't be afraid to ask for help. And very important to celebrate achievements. Like sometimes you feel that, the most important thing that you need to celebrate is your convocation or your commencement day, where the day where you receive your PhD, or if you're doing your master's, or you are in your undergraduate program, the day you receive your undergraduate degree. That's not the day that you should celebrate that day, but that's just not it. Sometimes if you're working on one experiment and you've done it several times and it's not working, that one day it worked, celebrate those little wins, because that will bring you joy, and that will just give you that sense of achievement. So celebrating the small wins is really important. And that shows that you're recognizing progress. And no matter how incremental the progress is, it always helps you to build that positive outlook. And it again reinforces a sense of achievement or a sense of accomplishment. So don't be shy to do that happy dance in lab once in a while. So going ahead with the next topic in hand, about multidisciplinary approach to research. And these are some of the things that I thought would this is a very general topic, so I think these were some of the points that can help in having a multidisciplinary approach to research. So first being having a collaborative environment and trying to train in multiple disciplines, acquiring the very important problem solving skills, and fourth, most importantly, having effective communication skills. So let's go over one of each of these points. Having a collaborating environment. A multidisciplinary approach fosters creativity and innovation by bringing together diverse perspectives. So, having a collaborative environment is very important. Now that I'm in the industry, I completely understand how a collaborative uh, approach to research is super important, because I am in the field of formulation, but I need to collaborate with so many other different people in my company to understand some of the things that I am trying to do in lab. So I'm trying to make a formulation for certain nucleic acid. So, but I am not an expert in genetics. So having reaching out to somebody who is an expert in genetics or is going to help me understand or design my protocols, and going and learning from if I'm making some errors in designing my mistakes, in designing my experiments, going back to those experts, discussing your experimental protocol and even your results will give you a better understanding of how to navigate through your research. So you may not be an expert at everything. So always collaborating with people who are an expert in the other field is only going to help you. So having that collaborative and being in that collaborative environment is super important. And always reach out to experts. Everybody is out there to help you. And sometimes it can so happen that when you reach out to somebody and try to ask about what they are doing, the conversation may not go um, as effectively. But sometimes when you reach out to somebody with a problem, because we are scientists, we are so in the whole concept of problem solving is so ingrained in us that you really want to help the other person solve their problem. So every if you ask reach out to somebody with a problem, they're definitely going to help you. So and that organization fosters that collaborative environment. Training in multiple disciplines, and I cannot stress enough how important this is with the current dynamic or the current strategies in the current scenario, that training in multiple discipline enhances your ability to tackle complex scientific challenges, and learning different technologies will definitely enable you to navigate these um, state of the art that is at the moment. So one of the areas that I would challenge you guys to consider, and this is something that I am challenging myself as well to consider, is learning a bit uh, about bioinformatics or artificial intelligence or data analysis. And AI or artificial intelligence is one area which is developing so much that everybody is talking about it in every company, everywhere. So if you can learn a little bit or try to understand how AI works, it would definitely help you in your career or in your research some or the other way. Because um, the world, however scary AI may be, it's something, it is a skill worth learning or at least trying to understand. So, training in these multiple disciplines, in addition to whatever is your core area of studies, is highly recommended. Third, and really the most important, problem solving skills. All of us are scientists here, so problem solving is the most important part of your day-to-day work in if you're based in a lab or even not even in the lab. So critical thinking, analytical skills, creative thinking, and experimental troubleshooting. I always say that if you are trying to learn a experiment or if you're trying to learn an instrument, you're only going to learn, or you can only say that you're an expert in that particular experiment or particular instrument is when you've made so many mistakes and then you've tried to troubleshoot those mistakes and then you fix that. Only then are you an expert. Because if you can just follow a protocol, that doesn't make you an expert in instrument or an experiment. But if you can fix mistakes in a particular experiment or particular instrument, only then can you be an expert in that instruments or that skill. So solving skills is one of the most important skills that you can develop. And this cute little cartoon that I found on the internet really ties it all down. Identify the problem, define the problem, try to explore what are the options you can try to fix the problem, take action to fix the problem, and sometimes it may not work. So you got to look back and identify the problem once again. And sometimes it can so happen that you have to understand that your particular experiment or your particular protocol is not working. So just stop it and start afresh. So that is um, essential part of experimental troubleshooting. And finally, I would say thing that ties everything down is effective communication. And effective communication skills when you're working with researchers from diverse background is of utmost importance. And sometimes it can so happen that you have to present your findings not just to researchers, but you have to present your findings to people who are not really well versed in your field. So it can be somebody. If you're working in an industry, you may have to present your experimental findings to people in marketing, people in business side of the company, your sponsors who are sponsoring your study, who may be from the business part of the company and may not be well versed in your research. So being able to effectively communicate your findings in a way that everybody in the audience understands is extremely important. And this goes back to something like avoiding too much using too much technical jargon. And that's something that I have done so much, and that is something that I'm trying to constantly improve, that uh, having the ability to communicate with your audience without the use of too much technical jargon is something, it's a skill that is worth perfecting. And there are many ways you can do that. You can be a part of different public speaking communities, public speaking groups. One of the public speaking group that really helped me was Toastmasters International. So if you can find such kind of organizations, or just have your own group for public speaking where you can have a safe space to perfect your people's public speaking skills, I highly recommend that you hone your communication and public speaking skills, because that is something that is really going to help you in your life. Because conveying your findings, if you are not able to convey your findings, you're doing a disservice to yourself. So um, a, effective communication is a really important skill that you will learn in your life. So with that, I conclude my presentation with two of my very favorite quotes. One is that it always seems impossible until it's done. So sometimes, for example, if you are into hiking, or you see where you have the some the height you have to climb, sometimes you can feel that, oh, I'm never going to do that. But once you reach there, it's like, okay, this was uh, this was fantastic, and I'm going to do it all over again. And that is same with research. Sometimes you can feel that this problem, this experiment that I'm doing, it's never gonna solve. But if you keep persevering, you will succeed. And finally, my all-time favorite quote is that if I've ever seen further than others, it is by standing upon the shoulder of giants. Is and that is whatever you are ever going to learn in life is by learning from other people's mistakes and other people's help. So always recognize that and always be grateful for that. Thank you very much, and open to questions. And please feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn. I'm really active on LinkedIn, and I have connected with a lot of you that I saw over the last few weeks. I received several connections, so please feel free to reach out to me if you have any questions or if you need to talk to me. Thank you.
Thank you so much. That was beautiful. It was insightful, and I learned a lot. So right now, if you have any question, you can drop it in the chat box or you raise up your hand. So we have one question, Doctor.
Sure.
I want to read it out. Okay.
I see on collaborative event, what tips would you
It says
suggest
that
in hand?
on collaborative environment, what tips would you suggest in handling, managing difficult people, having difficult conversations? Did you get that?
Yes, that is a
Yeah.
very, very, very good question, and it is a very interesting. So what I believe is that um, when you are dealing with, everybody has to deal with difficult people, and most important part about, if you want to collaborate, just clear communication always helps. And if you're having still having a problem because of the differences in personalities, try to see that the world is not a black and white. It is a lot of grays, so everybody is different and everybody has different communication styles. uh, and try to communicate as much as possible and understand your common ground. So if you're dealing with a person, both of you will definitely have one common ground, one common interest, and yeah, clear communication will always help instead of uh, assumptions. Assumptions don't help, clear communication helps. So yeah.
Thank you very much, Doctor. So, Doctor, I don't know if Emmanuel is satisfied. Okay, yeah. You said something while present. You said that we should always ask for help. So, in a situation whereby you ask a colleague of yours, maybe a scientist also, to help you out in something, and the person is not willing to help out, what can you do? Is it that you just move on to someone else, or you just communicate, and what can be
um
done?
Clear communication will help, but if they are not willing to help you, then yeah, accepting that you have different personalities, and maybe they, at this point, they don't have the bandwidth to help you. So it's nothing personal, it's never personal. It may be that the other person just doesn't have the bandwidth to help you right now, and just ask the next person. So yeah, just thinking about, like, oh my god, I asked this person and they didn't help me, and did I do something wrong? Like, we all go through that, the overthinking and all of that. Just that doesn't really help. Just it's never personal. uh just ask the other person. Maybe the person who couldn't answer you, they just couldn't at that point. So just ask the second person. You will find someone else who will help you.
Thank you very much, Doctor. So, if there's anyone in the session who has question, you can write it in the chat box or you raise up your hand.
Can mission backlogs, PTSD take up. I see a
Okay.
question. Yeah.
Should I read it out?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. It says, can one with several forms of emotional backlogs, e.g., PTSDs, take up scientific researches?
Um, PTSD is a mental it's a very important part of mental health, and any kind of emotional backlogs is definitely, it can take up, it can affect your life. So if it can affect your life, it can definitely affect your scientific research. And most important part is accepting that, and trying to seek professional help is more very important, because when it comes to mental health and things like PTSD, you need to rely on professionals, and that is how you are going to navigate through that. Because your peers may not be the best to complete. You can always seek or talk to your peers, but if in case of mental health diseases, mental health conditions, it is very important to reach out to experts to help you with that. And because if PTSD can affect your life, research or your work is part of your life. So everything is interrelated. So yes, it is very, very important to seek professional guidance or professional help.
Okay, thank you very much. I hope the guest is satisfied with our answer. So if there's any other question, you can kindly drop it in the chat box or you raise up your hand. Any other question? Any other question? Okay. In the absence of no question, thank you very much, Doctor. That was beautiful. That was in-depth. And thank you for pouring out knowledge into us tonight. I really appreciate it. Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Thank you
So,
very much for giving me the opportunity, and thank you to everybody for your very kind words of appreciation. Thank you very much.
you're welcome, ma'am. Okay, right now, the little information I have is that our video will be available on YouTube. You can go check it out later. You can watch and watch again. If you have any other question, when you sit down in your comfort zone to listen to all of these sessions again, you can, get more insight about all the things that we've learned so far. And you can reach out to all our um, moderators, those who taught us, our presenters. You can reach out to them on social media, send your questions to them, collaborate and all. Thank you very much. So we'll be having a closing remark by one of our co-founders, Mr. Martin. Mr. Martin, please, you can have the floor. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Please, can you see my screen?
Yes, I can
Yes.
see your screen.
Yes, I can
Okay,
see it.
thank you very much. Once more, thank you very much, Dr. Menon, for your talk and your presentation. I really enjoyed it and learned a lot from it. Thank you so much. And okay, without much ado, it has been a very wonderful ride for me, and I hope everyone has enjoyed it as much as I have. I'm talking not just of our 2-day event, but for the last 3 years as a community. It has been wonderful, and I think the best way I can just describe it is that it has been a miraculous event so far. Very wonderful one. So, and sometimes miracles are just good people with kind hearts. There's a very popular African saying that says that a single bead does not make a sound, but many beads do. So this goes to show how collective efforts matter so much in achieving goals. Therefore, I want to really appreciate all the people of Science Cafe, as well as our special guests tonight and for our event yesterday, Professor Catriona, Dr. Olakunle, Dr. Menon, and of course our very own Adeboye Gbangboye for sharing their knowledge and time with us. every word that has been shared has contributed a lot to us, and I hope that on the long run we'll benefit from it and be able to share our own experiences someday. So every community generally is like a forest. From outside it looks dense, but from inside you realize that every tree has its own place. So as a community, we recognize that in so many ways there are people that function in special capacity. And so on behalf of my co-founders and the entire community, I want to appreciate some of the most wonderful people behind our progress as a community. First, I would like to appreciate the incredible team behind this event for the unquantifiable time and effort that they put into organizing it and making it a success. So Emmanuel Adediron, Shakira Toyebi, Esther Folorunshaw, Bamboye Adeboye, I really thank you all for the effort you have put in the past months to ensure that we have this interesting, enriching presentation. Thank you so much for making it a memorable one. Also, I would like to thank our indefatigable volunteers, those in charge of our social media management. We thank the chaperones, the synthesis, all of them who form the structure responsible for our function as a community, from content creation to social media management to graphic design and community management. Even for some of us that have gotten some unique birthday messages is due to the work of people that give their time and dedicate their effort to make sure things work very well. We appreciate you all. So next, I want to appreciate the team responsible for organizing our first zonal and physical meetups, even though some of them were virtual. And these include Chinaza, Emmanuel Obanla, and Esther Adekoju. Thank you so much. Even though Lagos people, they broke the glass, but thank you. It's been a very nice experience so far. So although words constitute the most common form of expression among humans, they are not sufficient enough to really appreciate you for all you have done so far. We value you as a community and we really cherish what you have done. So in closing, before I leave, I want to personally extend this expression of appreciation to my co-founders, Wealth and Dolapo. I think their names convey what they mean as individuals. They are really wealth. They are very, very important sources of wealth to the life of the people around them. And it's so wonderful to have you people and to know you. Thank you very much, everybody. And for other people that are joining us from outside the community, we really appreciate your presence, and you can always engage with us on social media, and we hope to see you and interact with you more often. Thank you very much, everybody. Thank you so much. Esther Adekoju. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much, Mr. Martin. That was beautiful.